The guests thought it was just another Charleston fairy tale wedding until a battered BMW screeched to the gates. She stormed in, twin girls clinging to her hands and tossing the car keys to the floor, her voice cutting through the silence. "Stop the wedding. These children are his." If you were a guest at that wedding, what would cross your mind at that moment?
Hello, if you're ready to hear the whole story, click subscribe and tap the notification bell. Type in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as touching as this one, or maybe even crazier. And you don't want to miss it. Now let's begin.
Mama, are we poor? The question floated across the kitchen like a stone thrown into still water, rippling into every corner of the cramped apartment. Corinne Hale's hand froze halfway to the butter dish. The dull knife she held hovered over a slice of toast that was more black than brown. Across the small table, Neris, sharp-eyed and stubborn even at 8, stared at her with a seriousness no child should carry. Isolde, her twin, gave a little laugh, swinging her legs against the chair legs. "Don't be silly, Neris. Poor people don't drive BMWs. Corinne's gaze flicked to the counter, where a set of battered keys sat next to a mountain of unopened envelopes. Her old BMW was parked out back, rust creeping along the door, the engine coughing more mornings than it purred. Isolde was right in one sense. It was a BMW. But it wasn't the kind that made neighbors jealous. It was the kind that people whispered about. Why doesn't she sell it if she's struggling so much? She set down the knife, wiped her palms on her apron, and crouched between her daughters. Their faces, mirror images and yet so different, blinked back at her. "We're not poor," Corinne said gently, brushing crumbs from Neris's dress. Neris frowned. "Like him?" Corinne's chest tightened. She didn't need to ask who him was. Lucien Marlowe. The name had a way of creeping into their lives like mildew, silent, suffocating. He was Charleston's golden heir, his face plastered across charity gala spreads and business journals. To the world, he was success in a tailored tuxedo. To Corinne, he was the man who had walked away before her daughters even opened their eyes. Isolde twirled a strand of hair around her finger. "Is it true, Mama? Is he really getting married?" Corinne's throat tightened. The city had been buzzing for weeks about the wedding of Lucien Marlowe, an Aveline Cross, the daughter of a senator, the union of two dynasties, a match that would glitter in history books and cement Lucien's place among Charleston's untouchables. "Yes," she said finally, forcing the word past her lips. "He's getting married." The twins exchanged a look, the kind of silent communication that passed between them effortlessly. Then Neris asked the question that knocked the breath from Corinne's lungs. "Will he invite us?" For a moment the kitchen seemed to shrink. The refrigerator hummed loudly, the overhead light buzzed, and her heart pounded in her ears. She wanted to say yes. She wanted to shield them from the ugliness, but lies were what had built this prison around them. She could not add another. "No," she whispered, "we won't be invited." Silence thickened. Neris pressed her lips together, blinking fast, while Isolde looked down at her toast as if the truth might be hidden in the crumbs. Corinne turned quickly to the sink, scraping blackened bread into the trash so they wouldn't see her tears. And then, clang! The mailbox downstairs. She wiped her hands and hurried down the narrow stairwell. Her heart thudded as she rifled through the pile of envelopes. Ads, bills, more bills. Then she saw it. Cream-colored, heavy stock, the Marlowe family crest embossed in shimmering gold. Her breath caught. Hands trembling, she tore it open. "You are cordially invited to witness the union of Lucien Marlowe and Aveline Cross." Her knees nearly buckled. Of all the cruelties, this was the sharpest. It wasn't a mistake. It was a reminder. Someone wanted her to know her place, erased, silenced, mocked. But when she returned upstairs, two pairs of hazel eyes, so much like his, looked up at her, proof of his existence in their faces, in their very breath, proof he had tried to bury. She tucked the invitation into her apron pocket, her voice steady now. "Girls, finish your breakfast. We're going for a drive." Isolde blinked. "Where to?" Corinne glanced at the keys on the counter.
The old BMW had failed her many times before, but this time it would carry them exactly where they needed to go. "You'll see," she said. Across town, at the Marlowe estate, chandeliers were being polished until they gleamed like stars. Florists draped magnolia garlands across the wrought iron gates. Servers rehearsed the passing of champagne flutes, careful not to spill a drop. Inside his suite, Lucien Marlowe adjusted the cuffs of his tuxedo. His reflection in the mirror was perfection: chiseled jaw, slicked hair, the image of a man who had everything. Behind him, groomsmen joked, the sound of laughter and clinking glasses filling the room. But Lucien's hand trembled as he fastened the final button. Beneath the polish, he carried a secret no one in this room could see. He reached into a drawer, pulling out an old photograph he had told himself to destroy years ago. A younger Corinne, sunlight on her face, laughter frozen in time. His fingers brushed the edge of the picture before he shoved it back under a pile of documents. The door swung open. "Lucien," his best man called, "they're ready for you." Lucien straightened his tie, slipped on his mask of confidence, and walked out. He had no idea that a battered BMW was already making its way towards him, its engine coughing but determined, carrying the truth he had buried, the truth that refused to stay silent any longer.
The BMW coughed as it rolled up the long gravel drive, its faded paint out of place among the polished Bentleys and Rolls lined outside the Marlowe estate. Corinne gripped the wheels so tightly her knuckles turned white. In the rearview mirror, Isolde and Neris sat side by side, identical bows in their hair, identical questions in their eyes. "Are we really going inside?" Isolde whispered. "Yes," Corinne said, forcing steadiness into her voice. "We are." Neris leaned forward between the seats. "What if they don't want us there?" Corinne inhaled sharply. The truth was, they didn't. Every glittering chandelier, every engraved invitation, every perfect rose centerpiece in that mansion screamed the same thing: "You don't belong here." But she tightened her jaw. Sometimes you have to go where you're not wanted, especially when the truth lives there. The twins exchanged a glance, silent and electric. Corinne parked the BMW in the shadow of a towering oak, shut off the rattling engine, and took each of their hands in hers. Inside, the estate glowed with opulence. The air smelled of magnolia blossoms and expensive perfume. Strings of violins floated through the grand hall, where guests sipped champagne and whispered behind jeweled fans. Everyone sparkled in silks and tuxedos, eyes polished with the smug shine of old money. And then the double doors to the ceremony opened. Heads turned as Corinne walked in, her chin lifted, the twins clinging to her hands. She felt the heat of every gaze, the sting of every whisper. Her throat tightened, but she pushed forward, each step heavier than the last. On the raised platform at the end of the aisle stood Lucien Marlowe, flawless in his tuxedo, hand resting lightly over his bride-to-be's. Aveline Cross was a portrait at perfection, lace gown, diamond earrings, chin tilted like royalty. The violins faltered. A hush swept across the room. Lucien's face drained of color, his hand dropped from Aveline's. Corinne stopped halfway down the aisle. Her voice, low but unshakable, carried across the hall. "Stop the wedding." The crowd gasped. Aveline's eyes narrowed, Lucien's jaw tightened. Corinne pulled her daughters forward, their dresses plain against the glittering sea of silks. Her voice trembled once but steadied again. "Those children are his." The words cracked through the hall like lightning. Guests erupted into murmurs. Aveline's mother clutched her pearls. A groomsman swore under his breath. The officiant fumbled with his book, eyes wide. Lucien stepped forward, face pale, then flushed with anger. "What is this?" His voice was sharp, commanding. "Who lets you in here?" Corinne met his gaze, the weight of years pressing between them. "You know exactly who I am, and you know exactly who they are." The twins stood frozen, small hands gripping hers. Isolde's lip trembled, but she didn't cry. Neris glared, defiant even in her fear. Lucien's voice dropped. Venom laced through every word. "This is a lie, an ambush. Get them out." Aveline's face hardened, her hand snatching from his arm. "Who are they?" Corinne turned so every guest could see the twins' faces, their hazel eyes, their sharp chin, his features mirrored back at him.
The whispers grew louder, frantic. They looked just like him. She wouldn't dare if it weren't true. "They are your blood," Corinne said, her voice rising above the din. "Your daughters." The room fell into stunned silence. For one moment, Lucian wavered, his mask cracking, but then he sneered, cold and practiced. "Delusional. Security, remove her." Two men in suits moved toward the aisle. The twins clutched Corinne tighter, terror sparking in their eyes. "Don't you touch them," Corinne snapped, fire burning in her voice. For years she had been silent, swallowing humiliation. But no more. "You can marry your senator's daughter. You can build your empire on lies, but you will not erase them. Not anymore." Gasps. The air vibrated with scandal, every guest leaning forward. Aveline's mother hissed, "Lucian, is this true?" Lucian's face hardened. "No, she's obsessed. She wants money." Corinne's hand shook as she reached into her bag. She pulled out a small envelope, photographs spilling onto the marble floor. Images of newborn twins with his chin, his nose, dated and stamped. "I don't want your money. I want their truth." The officiant shifted uncomfortably, closing his book. The wedding was unraveling. For a heartbeat, Lucian said nothing. His silence was as loud as a confession. Aveline's face turned ashen. "You!" Her voice broke. She tore the diamond ring from her finger and hurled it across the floor. Gasps echoed as it clattered to a stop by Corinne's foot. "Lucian!" Aveline's father thundered from the front row. "Is this true?" Lucian's mask slipped completely. He didn't answer. He couldn't. The hall dissolved into chaos, voices rising, guests pushing toward the exits, scandal blooming like wildfire. Corinne bent down, scooping the photos back into her bag. Her hands trembled, but her voice remained steady as she looked up at Lucian one last time. "You can deny me. You can deny what we were, but you can't deny them. Not anymore." With that, she turned, gripping Isolde and Neris's hands. The crowd parted as she strode back down the aisle, whispers chasing her like shadows. The twins held their heads high, though tears brimmed in their eyes. Outside, the sunlight struck her face as she pushed through the doors. She inhaled sharply, chest heaving. For the first time in years, the weight she carried had been spoken aloud. Behind her, the Marlowe wedding lay in ruins. Ahead, battles loomed. But for this moment, Corinne allowed herself a single breath of triumph. The truth was no longer buried.
The sound of the cathedral doors slamming behind her still echoed in Corinne's ears as she ushered her daughters into the BMW. Neris wiped her cheeks with her sleeve, furious at herself for crying. Isolde sat stiffly, clutching her mother's arm. "Mama," Neris whispered, voice sharp with fear, "are they going to take us away?" Corinne's chest tightened. She leaned across the seat and pressed a kiss to both their foreheads. "No one is taking you anywhere, not while I'm breathing." The engine coughed to life, and she steered away from the chaos, leaving the glittering wreckage of the Marlowe wedding in the rearview mirror. But Corinne knew it wasn't over. She had fired the first shot. Now Lucian would come for her. Inside the estate, panic had replaced champagne sparkle. Guests whispered like hornets in the hallways, staff scrambled, and Aveline Cross had already vanished into a black car with her parents. The engagement, the alliance, the perfect image, all shattered in front of Charleston's elite. Lucian Marlowe stood rigid in the foyer, his hands clenched into fists. His best man approached cautiously. "Lucian, what the hell was that? Are they—" "Don't," Lucian snapped, his voice venomous. "Don't even ask." But the resemblance had been undeniable. The whispers of, "they look just like him," still rang in his ears. He shut his eyes, the image of the twins burned into his mind. He forced it down. This was a war of perception now, and he could not afford weakness. "Get me my lawyer, and a statement drafted by tonight. She wants a fight, she's going to regret it." The next morning, Corinne found her name splashed across headlines. "Wedding crasher claims billionaire secret children. Truth or blackmail. Marlowe empire under siege. Twins or twins of coincidence." She slammed the newspaper shut before her daughters could read over her shoulder. But the damage was done. Their faces were on every screen, their story dissected by strangers who had never known her sleepless nights
or their hungry winters. Her phone buzzed with an unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered. "Corinne." His voice was ice. She gripped the counter. "I have no right to call me." "You have humiliated me in front of the entire city," Lucian seethed. "Whatever game you're playing, it ends now. Retract it. Tell the press you lied, that you were desperate, unstable. Do that, and maybe I'll make sure you're compensated." Her throat burned with fury. "You think this is about money?" "Everything is about money," Lucian spat, "and reputation. Do you think anyone will side with you? You are a single mother with nothing. I am Lucian Marlowe." Corinne's voice rose, shaking with all the years she had been silenced. "You are a coward, hiding behind your family name. You don't scare me anymore." She hung up, her hand trembling as she dropped the phone onto the counter. By afternoon, reporters swarmed her street. Neighbors peeked through curtains as cameras flashed outside her crumbling apartment building. Corinne kept the twins inside, pulling blinds closed, but she knew she couldn't hide forever. When Neris asked, "Why are they saying you're lying?" something inside her broke. She knelt, cupping both girls' faces in her hands, because the truth scares people, and when the truth scares them, they try to bury it. But you are my truth, and no one is going to bury you. Isolde whispered, "Promise?" Corinne pressed her forehead to theirs. "Promise." Across town, Lucian sat in his lawyer's office, the polished oak walls lined with books he would never read. His lawyer, Dwight Renshaw, adjusted his glasses. "She has no proof beyond photographs and resemblance. If she tries to sue, we'll counterclaim for defamation. We'll paint her as unstable, manipulative. The press will eat it up." Lucian leaned back, exhaling slowly. "And the children?" Dwight hesitated. "They complicate matters. If she pushes for paternity testing—" "There won't be testing," Lucian cut in sharply. "We bury this. Do you understand?" The lawyer nodded, but his eyes flickered with doubt. Even the best spin couldn't erase what everyone had seen at the wedding. That evening, Corinne sat with the twins at the kitchen table, bills spread around them like battle plans. The invitation to the ruined wedding lay crumpled in the trash. A knock rattled the door. Through the peephole, she saw her landlord shifting nervously. She opened the door halfway. "Miss Hale," he murmured, "I don't want trouble, but reporters have been offering money for your story. I think you should maybe consider it. Rent's overdue." And Corinne's face burned. "I won't sell my daughter's lives for rent money." He raised his hands in surrender. "Just saying. Everyone's talking." She shut the door, pressing her back against it. For years, she had lived in silence, scraping by, protecting her daughters in the shadows. Now their lives were no longer theirs. And yet, as the twins curled against her that night, Corinne felt a strange clarity. The fight had begun, yes, but she wasn't powerless anymore. For once, Lucian Marlowe had been forced to see her, to see them. The resistance had begun.
The courthouse smelled of polish and paper, an odd mix of sterility and tension. Corinne sat stiffly on the wooden bench, her daughters on either side of her, their small hands tangled with hers. The twins wore their Sunday dresses, though the fabric had frayed at the edges. They looked around with wide eyes, whispering questions about the bailiff's uniform, about why everyone spoke in hushed tones. She kept her gaze forward, ignoring the flash of cameras through the tall windows. The press had swarmed outside. Reporters called her name, shouted questions about secret children, blackmail, wedding sabotage. Every word cut, but she held her chin high. Then the air shifted. He arrived. Lucian Marlowe stepped into the room, flanked by lawyers in sharp suits. His presence turned heads instantly, the charisma, the confidence, the aura of wealth. He looked like he belonged here, as though the courthouse were simply another boardroom under his control. His gaze swept the benches until it landed on her. For the briefest moment, his eyes flickered. Guilt, recognition, something human.
but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. He turned away, whispering to his counsel. Neris leaned closer. "Mama, is that—" "Shh, yes," Corinne whispered, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "That's him." Isolde squeezed her hand tighter. The judge entered and the proceedings began. Lucian's lawyer rose first, his tone polished, words dripping with superiority. "Your Honor, this entire spectacle is nothing more than a desperate attempt by Ms. Hale to extort my client. She timed her intrusion deliberately at the moment of my client's wedding to cause maximum humiliation. This is not justice, it is slander." Murmurs rippled across the room. Cameras clicked. Corinne's lawyer, a kind but overworked attorney from a nonprofit legal aid group, stood next. His voice lacked the commanding boom of Dwight Renshaw's, but it carried sincerity. "Your Honor, my client did not come forward for money. She has been raising 2 children on her own for 8 years. She has receipts, photographs, dates that line up with Mr. Marlowe's history. She only wants what the law already requires: acknowledgement, support, and truth." The judge's sharp gaze flicked to Lucian. "Mr. Marlowe, do you deny paternity?" Lucian rose smoothly, every move controlled. "I deny any and all claims that those children are mine. This is malicious fabrication." Gasps filled the room. Corinne's nails dug into her palm, but she stood. Her voice broke through the murmurs. "Look at them!" She gestured to the twins, who sat straight-backed, eyes wide. "Tell me you don't see yourself in their faces!" Lucian's eyes finally, reluctantly shifted to the girls. Nera stared him down, defiant. Isolde blinked rapidly, her small hand clutching Corinne's tighter. His jaw clenched. "Resemblance proves nothing." "Then let's test," Corinne said, fire lacing every word. "A simple DNA test. That's all it takes." The judge nodded, expression unreadable. "Very well. The court orders a paternity test. Until then, all public statements are to cease." Lucian stiffened, his composure slipping for the first time. "Your Honor, this is not a boardroom, Mr. Marlowe. This is a courtroom. You'll abide by its rules." The gavel struck, and the hearing adjourned. Outside the courthouse, the press descended like vultures. Microphones and cameras shoved toward her, questions flying. "Corinne, why now? Do you love him still? Are you after his fortune?" She raised her voice above the noise. Her daughters pressed close to her sides. "This isn't about me. This isn't about money. This is about 2 children who deserve the truth. That's all." Lucian exited through a side door, his team shielding him from reporters. But even from across the lot, their eyes met briefly. His glare promised war. Later that night, after the twins were asleep, Corinne sat at the kitchen table with her lawyer. Papers sprawled across the surface, court filings, evidence lists, medical records. "Lucian will fight this with everything he has," the lawyer said grimly. "He'll drag your name through the mud. He'll make you out to be unstable, irresponsible. He'll say anything to protect his reputation." Corinne nodded. "I know." He hesitated. "Are you ready for that?" Her gaze drifted to the small bedroom door where her daughters slept. "I've been ready for 8 years. They deserve better than his silence. If I have to walk through fire to get it, I will." At that same moment, Lucian sat in his penthouse office staring out over Charleston's glittering skyline. His lawyer poured him a drink, but he didn't touch it. "Do the test," Dwight urged. "If you refuse, it looks worse." Lucian's jaw worked. He remembered the look in the older twin's eyes, a look that mirrored his own when he was a boy, before his family trained it out of him. He shoved the thought aside. "No, we fight. We discredit her. We bury her." Dwight hesitated, then said quietly, "Sometimes the truth doesn't stay buried."
Lucian turned sharply. Then we'll make sure it does. The stage was set. For the first time in years, Corinne and Lucian were forced into the same space, their lives colliding under the harsh light of justice. She would not back down. He would not bend. And between them, the truth waited, patient, relentless, and undeniable.
The next week moved in fragments. Court dates, hushed conversations, reporters lurking like shadows at the edges of her life. Corinne learned to walk quickly, to keep her head down when she left the apartment, to shield her daughters with her body when cameras flashed. But in the quiet hours, after school books and dinner dishes, after the twins were in their pajamas, the questions began. That night, Neris lay in bed staring at the ceiling while Isolde twirled her hair anxiously. Corinne sat at the edge of the mattress, the lamplight painting her face in soft gold. "Mama," Neris whispered, "why didn't he want us?" Corinne's breath caught. She looked at their faces, so bright, so full of questions she had spent years avoiding. She could lie. She could protect them from the ugliest corners of truth. But hadn't lies already cost them enough? Her voice was soft. It wasn't you he didn't want. It was responsibility. He was too scared of losing what he thought mattered most, his name, his money, his family's approval. Isolde frowned. "But we're his family too." A tear slipped down Corinne's cheek. She brushed it away quickly. "Yes, the best part of him. But sometimes people choose wrong, and their wrong choices hurt others." Silence stretched. Then Neris asked, "Did you love him?" Corinne's eyes dropped to her hands, folded tightly in her lap. The memory pulled at her chest like an old scar. "Yes, once, before I knew what he was willing to throw away." The girls were quiet, and Corinne realized they needed more than vague answers. They needed the story. So she told it. 8 years ago, she had been a waitress in a small cafe near the river, working double shifts to cover rent. Lucien Marlowe had walked in one humid afternoon, immaculate, confident, but strangely human when he smiled at her. He kept coming back. He'd sit in her section, order the same thing, linger after hours. What began as stolen glances became long talks, then nights under the stars. Corinne hadn't cared about his last name, hadn't cared about the mansion he came from. She only cared about the way he looked at her, the way he laughed when she teased him, the way he whispered promises about a future. When she told him she was pregnant, she remembered the silence first, then the sharp inhale, then his eyes turning cold. "This will ruin everything," he had said. "I thought you loved me," she whispered. He did not answer. Instead, he disappeared into the gilded world that had always been his. Corinne remembered standing alone outside the Marlowe gates, clutching a letter she had written to him, begging him not to abandon her. The guard never let her past. The letter was returned unopened. She remembered giving birth with no one at her side but a nurse who held her hand. Remembered holding 2 perfect crying girls against her chest and promising them the world, even when she had nothing. When Corinne finished speaking, both girls were quiet. Then Isolde crawled into her lap, pressing her face against her chest. "You didn't need him, Mama. You had us." Corinne wrapped her arms around her, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. Neris reached over and clasped her mother's hand. "We'll be okay, even if he never says the truth." Corinne kissed the tops of their heads. "We will, because the truth doesn't need his permission. It exists whether he admits it or not." Across town, Lucien sat alone in his penthouse, scrolling through old photographs on his phone. He should have deleted them years ago, but he hadn't. Images of him and Corinne on the riverfront, her hair tangled in the wind, her laughter caught mid-breath. His father's voice echoed in his memory, sharp, commanding, unyielding. "You'll marry into legacy, not mediocrity.
You'll carry this family forward, not stain it with scandal. Do you understand?" He had understood, he had obeyed, and he had buried the cost. Now, with his engagement in ruins and the city whispering, the past clawed its way back. Dwight entered without knocking, a thick file under his arm. "We're preparing counter-evidence, witnesses, timelines, anything to suggest she's fabricating. But if the DNA test proves positive, we delay it. Find a way." Dwight frowned. Delaying only feeds suspicion. Lucien's jaw tightened. He shoved the phone away, erasing Corinne's face from the screen. "Then we bury her with doubt before the results arrive." 2 nights later, Corinne found a note slipped under her apartment door. No return address. Just a single sentence written in neat block letters. "You don't know everything about why he left." Her pulse quickened. She locked the door, checked the windows, then sat at the kitchen table staring at the paper. Was it a threat? A warning? Or something else? The past she thought she understood suddenly felt less certain.
The city buzzed with gossip, but in Corinne's apartment, life found quiet moments. The twins were sprawled on the living room floor, crayons scattered around them. Neris drew a gavel, bold and heavy on the page, while Isolde colored 2 stick figures holding hands with a taller one. When she showed Corinne, the stick figure had short dark hair and wore a tie. Corinne's breath caught. "Who's this?" she asked gently. Isolde hesitated, her cheeks pink. "That's him. I don't know what else to call him. He's supposed to be Daddy." Corinne's heart clenched. She smoothed a hand over her daughter's hair. "It's okay to draw what you wish, but remember, he's not a daddy just because he gave you his name. A real daddy is someone who shows up every day, who stays, who chooses you." Neris nodded firmly. "Then he's not our daddy." Corinne kissed both their heads. "You're right. You've never been without family. You've always had me. And each other." For the first time in weeks, the girls smiled easily. The next day, Corinne took them on a rare outing. The courthouse loomed too often in their recent memories, so she decided to replace it with something brighter. She drove them to Waterfront Park, where fountains splashed under the Charleston sun and the smell of sea salt drifted in the air. They ran ahead, giggling, their laughter carrying across the wide lawn. Corinne sat on a bench watching them spin in circles, their braids catching the sunlight. For a moment, the world felt normal again. Neris came bounding back, out of breath. "Mama, take off your shoes." "What? Come on!" She grabbed Corinne's hand, tugging her toward the fountain. Isolde joined in, and together they pulled her toward the spray. Corinne laughed, genuine, unguarded, and slipped off her shoes. They splashed together until their skirts were damp, until strangers passing by smiled at the sight of them. For the first time in years, Corinne allowed joy to sit beside her grief. She realized she wasn't just fighting against something, she was fighting for something. The laughter of her girls, their childhood, their freedom from shame. But joy had its limits. By evening, when they returned home, an envelope waited at their door. Legal papers. Inside, Lucien's lawyers had filed a motion, temporary injunction to restrict media statements by Corinne Hale. The document claimed her comments were defamatory and damaging to Mr. Marlowe's personal and professional reputation. Her hands trembled as she flipped through the pages. He was trying to silence her. Again! The twins peeked over her shoulder, sensing the shift. "What is it, Mama?" Corinne forced a smile. "Just more paper from his lawyers." She slid it into a drawer, out of sight. "But we'll handle it, like we always do." Meanwhile, Lucien sat alone in his penthouse office, lights dim, glass of untouched scotch on the table. For all the spin his lawyers managed, the tide was shifting. Rumors spread through Charleston's elite circles. Investors whispered. Aveline's father was lobbying against him behind closed doors. Lucien stared at his reflection in the glass window. For once, the confident heir looked tired, frayed at the edges. He remembered Corinne's face at the wedding, the defiance in her eyes, and the children. Their eyes haunted him most. He shook his head, forcing the thoughts away. He could not bend, not now, not ever. But cracks had begun to form in his mask, and he knew it.
Later that week, Corinne's lawyer visited with unexpected news. "The test results are in," he said, lowering his voice so the girls wouldn't hear. "The judge will review them in chambers first. We won't know until the next hearing." Corinne's chest tightened. The truth was close, so close she could almost touch it. But she also knew Lucien would fight until the last second, would do everything possible to twist even undeniable science. That night as she tucked the girls into bed, Isolde whispered, "Mama, when the judge says the truth, will everything be better?" Corinne brushed her daughter's hair from her face. "It will be different, but better? That's something we'll make together." Neris yawned. "Even if he still says no?" "Yes," Corinne said firmly, "because the truth doesn't need his permission. It stands on its own." The twins nodded sleepily, their trust in her absolute. As she watched them drift into dreams, Corinne realized something. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was teaching her daughters what it meant to stand tall even in the storm. And for the first time in years, she felt the beginnings of peace.
The headline glared from every newsstand the next morning. Gold-digging waitress fakes children to extort Marlowe fortune. Corinne froze outside the corner store, the bag of milk nearly slipping from her grip. The photograph beneath the headline was of her, grainy and unflattering, snapped when she was walking the twins to school. The caption called her a scorned woman, a nobody clinging to a fantasy. She didn't need to guess who had planted the story. By the time she reached the apartment, reporters had swarmed again. Microphones shoved toward her, voices overlapped. "Corinne, was it true you've lied about everything? Did you coach your daughters to claim him as their father? Are you after the Marlowe fortune?" Her daughters clung to her sides, their faces pale. Isolde whispered, "Mama, why are they saying those things?" Corinne shoved through the crowd, voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. "Hold my hands. Don't listen to them." But inside, as she bolted the door against the chaos, her own doubts whispered. Could Lucien really twist the world so completely against her? That evening, her lawyer confirmed it. He's running a full-scale smear campaign. Articles, interviews, even paid witnesses claiming you've been obsessed with him for years. He's trying to drown you in lies before the DNA results are revealed. Corinne's head dropped into her hands. And people will believe him. Some will, but not all, the lawyer said. The results will speak louder than his noise. She nodded, though her stomach knotted with fear. Lucien, meanwhile, sat across from a television host, the cameras rolling. He wore sorrow like a tailored suit, his voice calm, practiced. "It's unfortunate," he said smoothly, "but I've dealt with this before. People see wealth and influence and think they can exploit it. Ms. Hale is a troubled woman I once tried to help. I never expected she'd use children to hurt not only me, but my family's reputation." The host leaned forward. "And you deny all claims of paternity?" "Absolutely," Lucien said firmly. His jaw didn't even twitch. Backstage, his lawyer nodded approvingly, but Lucien felt the weight of his own words pressing against his chest. The fallout hit Corinne hard. Parents at school whispered when she dropped off the twins. Neighbors avoided her in the hall. A woman in the grocery store muttered, "Shameless," as she passed. It all came to a breaking point one afternoon when Neris came home with tears streaking her face. "They called us liars. They said you made us up." Corinne's heart splintered. She knelt, gathering both girls into her arms. "Listen to me. Look at me." She cupped their faces, forcing their tearful eyes to meet hers. "The truth doesn't change because people are too afraid to see it. They can call us names, they can tell their lies, but you know who you are. You know where you come from. And one day, so will everyone else." Isolde sniffled. "But it hurts, Mama." "I know," Corinne whispered, holding them tight. "It hurts me too, but we will get through it, together." That night, after the girls were asleep, Corinne sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at the shadows on the wall. She felt the weight of years pressing down, the exhaustion, the loneliness, the endless fight.
For a moment, she let the thought slip in, what if he wins? Tears blurred her vision. She buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking. But then her gaze fell on the refrigerator, where the twins had taped their drawings, the gavel, the stick figures, the words, Mama plus us equals family, written in crooked letters. She sat up straighter, wiped her eyes. He could strip her of reputation, of safety, of comfort, but he would never strip her of them. And with that, she steadied herself again. Elsewhere, Lucian returned to his penthouse, the glow of his TV interview still lingering. Yet the silence of the apartment pressed in. He poured himself a drink, but his hand trembled. For all his denial, for all the lies he spun, the memory of those girls' eyes gnawed at him. He slammed the glass onto the counter, fury surging. This was not weakness. This was strategy, and he would not lose. But alone, in the dark, even Lucian Marlowe could not quite drown out the echo of Corinne's words at the wedding, "You can't deny them. Not anymore." By the end of the week, Corinne stood battered by headlines, shunned by neighbors, burdened by her daughter's tears. It was the lowest she had ever been. Yet somewhere beneath the ruin, a fire smoldered. She was bruised but not broken, silenced but not erased. The storm had nearly crushed her, but it had not killed her resolve. And soon the truth would arrive, not as whispers, not as accusations, but as undeniable proof.
The courtroom smelled faintly of old wood and dust. Corinne sat stiffly at the plaintiff's table, her lawyer beside her, while the twins waited at home with a trusted neighbor. She had begged the judge to spare them this moment. Across the aisle, Lucian sat in his tailored navy suit, outwardly calm though his jaw clenched tight. Dwight shuffled papers, pretending efficiency, but his eyes betrayed tension. The judge adjusted his glasses. The court has received the paternity test results conducted by the state laboratory. The words rang in the silence. Corinne's breath caught. Her hands clenched together, knuckles white. The judge continued, "The probability of paternity between Mr. Lucian Marlowe and the minors in question is 99.998%. The room seemed to exhale at once. Corinne's throat burned with tears she refused to shed. She looked at Lucian, daring him to deny what science had laid bare. For the first time, his mask slipped. A flicker of panic crossed his face before he schooled it back into blank indifference. The judge set the paper aside. This court recognizes Mr. Marlowe as the biological father. Further proceedings regarding custody, child support, and visitation will be scheduled accordingly. The gavel struck. It was done. Outside the courthouse, cameras swarmed. Reporters shouted questions, microphones thrust in every direction. "Miss Hale, how do you feel now that the truth is out? Mr. Marlowe, do you have any comment on the results?" Corinne stood on the courthouse steps, her lawyer shielding her as much as he could. She lifted her chin, her voice steady despite the quiver in her chest. "I told the truth from the beginning, for my daughters, for their right to know who they are. This was never about money or revenge. It was about honesty. And now the truth stands." The crowd erupted with more questions, but she stepped back, refusing to let them twist her words. Lucian pushed through the mob, face stone cold, ignoring every question. But when one reporter shouted, "Do you plan to be a father to them now?" he paused for just a second, his eyes flickering. Then he walked away without answering. That night, Corinne returned home to find the twins waiting by the window. As soon as she opened the door, they rushed forward, clinging to her. "Did it work?" Isolde asked, breathless. "Did the judge believe you?" Corinne kneeled down, smiling through her tears. "The test proved everything. The court knows the truth now." Neris's eyes widened. "So everyone has to believe it too?" "They do," Corinne said softly. "No one can take that away from us now." The girl squealed, hugging her tightly. For the first time in years, she felt the weight lift from her shoulders. Vindication wasn't just hers, it belonged to them.
Across the city, Lucian sat alone in his penthouse. The television played quietly, the news anchor repeating the same headline over and over. DNA confirms Marlowe heir is father of twins. His phone buzzed nonstop, investors pulling back, family demanding explanations, Aveline's father threatening lawsuits. His empire trembled, not from market shifts, but from the truth he had tried to bury. He poured another drink, staring out at the city lights. He had a choice: acknowledge his daughters and salvage some dignity, or continue the lie until it devoured him. His reflection in the glass window offered no answers. Meanwhile, Corinne tucked the twins into bed, their small faces glowing with relief. She kissed their foreheads, whispering, "You are enough. You always were." When she turned off the light, she paused at the doorway, heart swelling. This fight had scarred her, nearly broken her. But tonight, for the first time, she knew she had won, not against Lucian, not against the Marlowe name, but against silence, against shame, against erasure. The truth was alive in her daughter's laughter, their drawings taped to the wall, their trust resting in her arms. And that was worth more than all his millions.
The courthouse was quieter on the final day, though the air still buzzed with tension. Corinne sat at her table, the twins absent again, shielded from the noise of their father's downfall. The judge read the ruling slowly, methodically. Given the confirmed paternity, Mr. Marlowe will provide child support in accordance with his income, effective immediately. Ms. Hale retains full custody. Visitation rights may be petitioned in the future, but until Mr. Marlowe demonstrates consistency and stability, the court finds visitation unsuitable at this time. The gavel struck, final and heavy. It was over. Corinne exhaled, her chest loosening for the first time in years. Lucian didn't look at her. He stared straight ahead, his jaw tight, hands gripping the edge of the table. Even when the ruling was read aloud, he offered no acknowledgement, no glance, no word. Corinne rose slowly, smoothing her skirt. She didn't need his recognition. The law had spoken. The truth was on record. And her daughters would never again be called liars. Reporters swarmed the steps outside, but this time, Corinne didn't flinch. She stood tall, voice calm as she spoke. This fight was never about wealth. It was about truth. My daughters deserve to grow up knowing who they are, and today they have that. I hope this reminds others who've been silenced that the truth is worth fighting for, no matter how powerful the opposition seems. The cameras flashed. The journalist asked, "What would you say to Mr. Marlowe now that the court has spoken?" Corinne paused, her eyes steady. "I'd say what I've always said. Fatherhood is more than a name on a certificate. It's showing up. And whether he chooses to or not, I will always show up for them." The next morning, the papers had changed their tone. DNA proves Hale right. Twins belong to Marlowe heir. Waitress who took on a fortune and won. In the grocery store, where whispers once followed her, strangers now nodded respectfully. Some even stopped to murmur encouragement. "You were brave. Your daughters are lucky to have you." It wasn't perfect. Not everyone would be convinced. Not every stain would fade. But the tide had turned, and Corinne walked with her head high. That evening, she took the twins for ice cream, a quiet celebration of survival. They sat on a park bench, chocolate smudged across their grins, the summer air soft around them. Neris licked her spoon clean. "So, now it's over?" Corinne smiled gently. "The hardest part is, but life will keep going, and we'll keep going too." Isolde leaned against her. "Mama, we're proud of you." Corinne's throat tightened. She wrapped her arms around both of them, breathing in their sweetness, their innocence, their strength. "I'm proud of us," she whispered. "We fought together, we won together."
Across town, Lucian sat in his penthouse, surrounded by silence. His phone had stopped ringing, deals evaporating, friends vanishing. His family, once so eager to dictate his life, had turned their backs. On the table before him lay the official court documents, the confirmation of paternity, the support order, and the loss. He poured himself a drink, but it tasted bitter. For years he had believed he was untouchable. Now 2 little girls and the woman he abandoned had undone him with nothing more than the truth. He told himself he didn't care, but when he closed his eyes, he saw their faces, the way they had looked at him on the church steps. He pushed the glass away. For the first time, he wondered if silence would haunt him more than their voices ever could. Weeks later, Corinne walked along the same waterfront where she had once dreamed of a future with Lucian. This time, her daughters skipped ahead, their laughter filling the evening air. The city lights shimmered against the water, but she no longer saw the Marlowe estate across the river as something untouchable. She saw it for what it was, a gilded cage that she had escaped. The future stretched open before her, vast and unclaimed. She squeezed her daughter's hands as they came running back, breathless and happy. "We're free," she whispered. "And that's all that matters." The girls grinned, their eyes reflecting the street lamps like stars. Corinne smiled back, her heart full. Not broken, not silenced, not erased, but whole. Finally whole. And so the story closed. Not with reconciliation, but with triumph. Not with wealth or marriage, but with truth, dignity, and the unshakable bond of a mother and her children. Because sometimes the happiest ending isn't getting back what you lost. It's proving you never needed it in the first place. If you were Corinne, would you have crashed that wedding and fought the way she did, or stayed silent? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because this story is as much about courage as it is about truth. And life can actually happen to anyone. What would you have done if you were her?
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you loved this story, you will definitely love the next one. It's more intriguing than you can ever imagine. So go ahead and watch it now. Click on the image on your screen right away to watch the next one. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. It helps and encourages us to share the best human interest stories you'd love.